about the sidur. I was 12 years old, and my late father-in-law, he was our mashpia. This is in Tovshin Lamed Dalet, and he started pushing us one by one that we should ask the Rebbe about Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. Now, this was unheard of a boy wearing Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin in the Lubavitch from Bar Mitzvah. But he, if you look in the back of Likutei Sichos Chelik Beis, you see the stories during the Shiva of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tovshin Yud. And the Rebbe says a comment, the Rebbe said he would have, if he would have the possibility, he would have introduced Rabbeinu Tam from Bar Mitzvah. So here, Rabbi Sudak has a Bar Mitzvah class for the first time in his, I think, in his career as shliach, etc. He has his Bar Mitzvah class, and he starts pushing us to ask the Rebbe about Rabbeinu Tam. So, okay, so I went into the Rebbe with my father, Val Shalom. This is Chanukah, Tovshin Lamed Dalet, and I'd been pestering my father. This was before my Bar Mitzvah, the first time I saw the Rebbe. I pestered my father after asking Rabbeinu Tam. So the Rebbe, my father asked, "Will legen Rabbeinu Tam?" So the Rebbe says to my father, if he will commit himself not to have foreign thoughts, and I'll just say the Lashon in Yiddish now translate. When machshavas asuras redt man doch nicht, no machshavas reshus euch nicht. Forbidden thoughts is out of the question, but even arbitrary thoughts also not. Listen to that, guys, yeah? It's doch nur 10 minutes. It only takes 10 minutes. Und der Eitzet zu dem ist, rein zu gucken in sidur. Sei zu shema bohem shemoya, sei zu vayidam bohem kiviyacha. The solution to this is that you should look into the sidur for the various parshas which you read in Rabbeinu Tam. Okay? And then the Rebbe asks, does he have his own tefillin yet? My father said, no. So the Rebbe said, wait till he has his own tefillin. So I go back to London, order the pair of tefillin. Eventually I got them and started wearing Rabbeinu Tam. And then one after the other, Bochrim are asking the Rebbe about Rabbeinu Tam. And then it comes Purim Tovshin Lamed Vav, and the Rebbe says it's all clear. No need to ask anymore. Everyone can put the Rabbeinu Tam from Bar Mitzvah. Fine. But meanwhile, I have got this condition of Nish Masiach Das, I know no Machshavas Horas, you know. And it was Tovshin Lamed Zayin. I was ready in Yeshiva in Brunois, and Reb Nissen was our mashpia, and he gave us a rigorous preparation before we go into the Rebbe. And we went to Yechidus, so we had to present a sealed envelope from the mashpia. So I don't know what was written there, but in my zettel I wrote that I feel I was apologizing, that I'm not keeping the condition. I was apologizing to the Rebbe. I'd made an agreement, commitment. I'm not keeping the commitment. And of course, I was hoping that he would say, you're a cute kid. It's okay, don't worry about it. Everyone's got it for free. You all got it for free. But, no such luck. So the Rebbe gave a bracha, as I had written in my zettel. And then he says these words, in reference to that which you asked about Rabbeinu Tam. If a foreign thought falls into your mind, you should raise your voice somewhat, and then you should, and that will drive away the machshava zara. So unwittingly, I just see this whole hobby, as you call it, as I gravitated to researching the sidur as a bocher. This is going back already, more than 40 years, and if you are nowadays, everyone has the new Shulchan Aruch, which has got sources. In those times, going back even 20 years ago, you had no sources for the sidur. For example, every Lubavitcher Bocher, how do you know Lubavitcher Bocher? You walk in the street, how do you know Lubavitcher Bocher? His shirt is sticking out, yeah? Why is his shirt sticking out? Because he has Talskotten has to have a shear. Why? Because the Alter Rebbe says if the shear or the Talskotten is zuknech, he's crumpled, it loses the shear. Where does he get it from? It's unique to Chabad, yeah? So there were no sources for this kind of thing, and I as a bocher I was gravitating to find sources, and as I was a bocher on shlichus in Melbourne, I published in the Yeshiva Kovetz sources for Hilchos Tzitzis in the Alter Rebbe Sidur, if I'm not mistaken, before I went out to Melbourne, I prepared this as a gift to the Rebbe, and he said, Shaykh Likahos. It was just, it's 20, 30 pages. At any rate, fast forward, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to give you the actual shir. Tofshin Nun Gimel. I had heard that the Rebbe, this is now, 10 years later, whatever. I had heard that the Rebbe, Rabbi Mangel, was in London, Rabbi Nissan Mangel, and he had said something that the Rebbe has, like he prepared notes on the Haggadah. The Rebbe has notes on the whole sidur. And I had just been asked a shaila about tzitzis, about why the Alter Rebbe says you should have a blanket, cutting off the corner of the blanket, and I looked at it, I realized that with all my research, I didn't understand what was going on there. And I said, halavai, we would have the Rebbe's biur on Hilchas, on the Siddur, and we can see it, I don't understand it. It's Tofshin and Gimel, the Rebbe is already incapacitated Begashmias. And so I wrote to the Rebbe, and I asked, Ulai Achshadora, Ulai, perhaps the Rebbe will release his notes on the Siddur. I heard that the Rebbe has notes on the Siddur. Please allow us to see your notes on the Siddur. And I say this now, now Reb Leibel Groner just passed away, Allah Shalom, and I say this into his credit. So he read my zettel to the Rebbe, and at that time the Rebbe was responding by motions of the head. So he said that Raskin from London is asking about the Rebbe releasing his notes on the Siddur, and the Rebbe shook his Rosh HaKodesh to the negative. Now, so then Reb Leibel, Allah Shalom, he says to the Rebbe, Zol Raskin in London, Mamshich sein in sein research, whatever words he used. So the Rebbe shook his head in the affirmative. So I had never asked him. I wanted the Rebbe's notes, but meanwhile, Reb Leibel asked whether I should I should continue my research, and I got in those circumstances, I got a haskama that the Rebbe said I should continue the research. And I see this all connected because the Rebbe said Arayin Kukin in Sidur. And so now we're going to do some Arayin Kukin in Sidur, and I've got an enormous passion for this. And when Rabbi Shochat asked me to give a shir, I thought, I'll share with you something which I think is a little bit of Mokem Hinichul is gathered by. I've got the something which I something very special to share with you. Okay, so now we've got the slide number 1. Slide number 1 is a quote from Sefer HaTorah. The history is that the Alter Rebbe's, the official date of the first print of the Alter Rebbe Siddur is Tov Kuf Samach Gimel. Don't ask me to transfer it into English years. It's just over 200 years ago. 217 years ago. In Shklov. And what was before then? So we have, if you know the story of Shimon HaKofer, there was a maskil by the name of Shimon of Zamut, and he clandestinely comes to Liozna, and he's verbringing with the Chassidim, and this story where he goes into the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe susses him out, and because this Shimon was sending boys from Vilna, sending them to Berlin, and they were becoming total apikursim. At any rate, so he, in his conversations with the Chassidim, like chatting with them, so he's saying how impressed he is with the Alter Rebbe's nusach. Now this is in Tov Kuf Nun Beis. This is 10 years before the Siddur is printed. So what does it mean that the Chassidim had a nusach at the time? So here you can read on your screen. I'm going to read the first paragraph. Ka'amur hispashit kvar ba'esahi nusach hatfilo b'ksav yad. The Alter Rebbe's nusach at that time had not been printed as a siddur; it was in manuscript form. Mehem shikosvu hashinuyim b'sidur shar hashamayim shel hashalo shehu masim yoser lenusach Rabbeinu Hazaken. Some of them wrote them on the margins of the sidur shar hashamayim the Shalom. Now, just for a moment, who is the Shalom we know lived approximately 300 years ago? He prepared a siddur. It was when he emigrated to Eretz Yisrael. As you know, the Shalom is buried, I think, in Tveria. he emigrated to Eretz Yisrael. First, he lived in Yerushalayim, and perhaps for some reason he moved on to Tveria. I'm not sure about that history. But when he was in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, he put together the sidur, and he called it Shar HaShamayim, because as we know, the pasuk was there, Shar HaShamayim. Now, if you want to see this original sidur, I've seen the first one was printed in Amsterdam, Tov Ayin Zion. The second one was printed in Amsterdam, Tov Kuf Beis. Imagine 2 Likutei Torahs. That's how big that sidur is. So it's not exactly a pocket-sized sidur. And the Chassidim, I guess, the ones who were more, who could afford it, would have a Shalosh sidur, and they would write the Chassidim shared the notes of the Alter Rebbe on the sidur, and they wrote them on the margins of the sidur Shar Shamayim. Let's read further. Or they had just a regular nusach Ashkenaz sidur, and they would make the Alter Rebbe's emendations they would note them on the margins of their Ashkenaz sidur. So this is the earliest record what we have of. So we have the nusach. We have a typical chassid 200 and something years ago doesn't have a Alter Rebbe sidur. He has a Ashkenaz sidur. He has notes on the side, and then the Alter Rebbe sidur comes and makes a klorkite. You know, sidurim have the least shelf life of all svarim. To find a sidur which from 250 years ago intact is a rarity, unless it's a lomdisha sidur, which is not for davening, but a davening sidur people use, and then they consume it. After a few years, it's already put into shemus. So actually, the first edition of the Alter Rebbe sidur was not known to exist 100 years ago. There's a letter of the Rebbe Rashab over 100 years ago. He says, I don't have a copy of the first print of the sidur. Perhaps in the National Library of Petersburg, perhaps there is a copy of this sidur. And I don't have a person to go there, whatever. Baruch Hashem, about 5 years ago approximately, in the Frierdiker Rebbe's collection of Sforim in Moscow, which are still Beshivya, but we were given access. And there was discovered a print of the sidur, and it's pretty sure that it's Tov Kuf Samach Gimel, and the front has got a page. There's no the Sharblat. The first page is missing, but there's like a blank sheet with a handwritten note of the Frierdiker Rebbe that perhaps this is the sidur from Shklov Tov Kuf Samach Gimel. And perhaps we'll get back to that. But this was an amazing discovery, that something which had been out of circulation for all these years, and now we have access to what was possibly or likely to be the first print of the Alter Rebbe, certainly a very early print. All right, let's get down to. So we're going to first now introduce you to Sidur Shalom. Okay, so there we are. This is the sidur printed in Amsterdam, in Holland. South Africa has a special shachas to Holland, yeah? We speak a very similar language, Nederlands, Afrikaans, yeah? So this is printed in Amsterdam, and this is the first print, as I say, Tov Ayin Zion. We go then, this is just over 200 years ago, yeah? 203 years ago. Well, I'm corrected, it's just over 300 years ago. Tov Ayin Zion to Tov Shin Ayin Zion, it would be 300 years. Okay, now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because for me it's too small. There we are. Okay, so in the Gemara there's a discussion. Do we say Avas Oilam or Ahava Rabbo? And okay, and this is also a discussion in Chassidus, which is higher. Avas Oilam means a worldly love, and Ahava Rabbo is a great love. Or do you say Avas Oilam is an eternal love? So therefore, Avas Oilam is higher. But at any rate, there's a discussion. But Lahalocha, the nusach Ashkenaz is to say Ava Rabo Ahavtonu Hashem Elokeinu. Okay. Let's go down to the next slide. This is the second edition of the Sidur Shalom, printed also in Amsterdam by the company called Proofs, and it is in Tov Kuf Beis, printed 3 years before the Alter Rebbe was born, in Tov Kuf Heish, year Kahos. And let's see, we're going to take one test page, yeah? And so we're looking now at the, what does he say? The nusach is By Rabbi. Okay. Now we then go on to, I'm going to go through sidur Arizal. Sidur Arizal, the Arizal did not write a sidur. The Arizal taught kavonos al pi Kabbalah, and then his talmidim were mesader the kavonos. He's a prime talmid is Reb Chaim Vital, who wrote the Eitz Chaim, Pri Eitz Chaim, Shah Kavonos, etc. But the sidur Arizal in the form that you have a sidur with the kavonos on the margin, etc. That was a later development. There was no printed sidur Arizal in the times of the Baal Shem Tov and not in the times of the Maggid. Whoever had a sidur Arizal, it was a handwritten sidur and it had to be copied over. The first print of the sidur Arizal is in Zolkvi, Tov Kuf Mem Aleph. That's 4 years after the passing of the Mizritche Maggid. That's the first print of the sidur Arizal. Another fascinating discovery, which we'll come to perhaps if we have time, is when in the last months of the lifetime of the Mizritche Maggid, the Alter Rebbe is Meshameshim. He's there in attendance. And then a new person came, a new Talmud came. His name was Rabbi Stroll Hofman, Hopstein, otherwise known as the Koznitzer Maggid. The Koznitzer Maggid had the reputation that he was Boki in, I think, 800 Sifrei Kabbalah. Now, I don't even know the names of 100 Sifrei Kabbalah. He was Boki in 800 Sifrei Kabbalah. If you want to say it's an exaggeration, they don't say those exaggerations about me and most of us. So he was he was an enormous Boki in Kabbalah. He comes to the Maggid, and the Maggid says, Van Vist, where are you from? So he says, he's from Koschnitz. So where's Koschnitz? Not far from Varsha. So then it's Ken Zayin that it could be that in the near future, we could have that in Varsha. Forgotten what it was. It was something that the Maggid said that in Varsha they'll have that half of Varsha will start davening. They'll say that Keser instead of Nakdishach. Okay. And so, because he was hoping that through this Koznitzer Maggid, he will infiltrate the Derech HaChassidus, and people will switch from nusach Ashkenaz to daven nusach Sfard, and they'll say Keser instead of Nakdishach. Okay. Then there's this comment which the Mizritche Maggid says to the Alter Rebbe, jetzt haben wir ein Gemahn, was it können Magia sein, dem Sidur Arizal, was it bei uns voranen. Now we have an opportunity to find a good candidate to edit the sidur Arizal, which I have. So the Maggid has a sidur Arizal in manuscript, and he's not satisfied with the quality of the work. And he wants someone who knows his stuff to go through it and edit it. And so now the Mizritche Maggid entrusts his personal Arizal manuscript sidur to the Koznitzer Maggid, and he says, work on it, develop it, edit it. Within the last 5 years, this sidur, Ksav Yad, has emerged. It's been passed down. I'm not even sure who owns it, but I've been in contact with someone from the Vizhnitzer dynasty who has access to this sidur. And they've published pages of it, of the manuscript, and they've noticed there's a handwriting there of the Koznitzer Maggid, and then here and there they've noticed another handwriting, and that is they've identified that's the handwriting of the Alter Rebbe. So here we have something which an amazing discovery. It's been shrouded for 200 years, and we have here a sidur from the Mizritche Maggid, a sidur Arizal manuscript, notes of the Koznitzer Maggid, and here and there a few little notes of the Alter Rebbe too, who worked with the Koznitzer Maggid at the time. So this is B'chayov of the Mizritcha Magin Tov Kuf Lamed Beis, Tov Lamed Gimel, and then years later, 30 years later, the Alter Rebbe prints his sidur. Well, all right, let's go now to the next slide. This is the front page, the Shabbalat of the Sidur Jolkve and Tov Kuf Mem Aleph. So let's now, we're going to our test page. We're going to look at the what are the instructions for Ahavas, for Ahavas Olam. So I'm going to, let's take a look at those lines. Ein lo yimar Ava Rabba b'chayil, ki im b'Shabbos. On the weekdays, you shouldn't say Ava Rabba. Shabbos, you'll say Ava Rabba. Ava b'chayil, yoyma Avas Olam. On the weekdays, it's Avas Olam. Ki Ava Rabba is not Tzilis. And b'Krishma, we are still in the Hecholos. We're not yet on the level of Ava Rabba. Therefore, ein ochin leima Ava Rabba, ki Avas Olam, because that's Ava Zuta, and we're still Becholos. Listen, he explains Al Pi Kabbalah that we should on weekdays say Avas Olam, and there you have the bottom of the page that we say in the weekdays it's Avas Olam. Okay, so now things are developing. If till now I was davening nusach Ashkenaz in the sidur Shaloh, so now the Alter Rebbe was known as a Shaloyid, yeah. So now the Pran B'Tov Kuf Mem Aleph, they publish a sidur Arizal, and now I see a new thing. No. In the weekdays it's Avas Olam, and in the Shabbos then it's Ava Rabba. Okay, things are moving. Tov Kuf Mem Ches. 7 years later, Reb Osher, who lived in Brod, and he publishes a new edition, a second edition of the Sidur Arizal, and he bases himself on his predecessor, the one which was printed in Jolkve, but he felt it was lots of mistakes there, and so he publishes a new edition. So we have this edition. I saw the Rebbe's one in the Rebbe's library, bought from Bigeleisen on the Lower East Side. I'm not sure which year it was bought. But it was till recently. It was very rare to get hold of this sidur, the print of Tovkuf Memches. So now let's read the instructions. So he has the same, it's pretty much the same instruction that on the weekdays we say Avas Olam rather than Ava Rabba. Okay. This is the second print of the Sidur Arizal. We then go on to the next slide where we have Sidur, So this is printed in Koretz, help me, Tovkuf Nun Daled. And this is, if you could see here, can you see my pointer? Can you see that? Can you see as I'm? Yeah. Okay. So this is put together by the Reb Shabsi of Rashko. So the Reb Osher, who published that previous Siddur, was also connected to the Baal Shem Tov. But here we have the Siddur of Reb Shabsi, and of the 4 editions of the Siddur Arizal, this was the favorite of the Rabbeim, and the Rabbeim would have Tzemach Tzedek and the Friedrich Rebbe and the Rebbe, they would have the Siddur Reb Shabsi at their table at the Seder Nacht, and also by Tkiyas. By Tkiyas Shofer also would have the Siddur Reb Shabsi. So this Siddur Reb Shabsi Mirashkov. As you see, it's printed Tovkuf Nun Dalet. Reb Osher had access to the manuscript of this when he worked on his edition earlier, but this was published, as you see, in Koretz and Tovkuf Nun Dalet. And now let's see what the instructions are here for Avas Olam. Okay, let's go up. Sorry? No. Tovkuf Nun Dalet. Oh, it's 6 years later. Memches to Nun Dalet. Okay, there we are. So we have here again, he says, don't say Ava Rabba. Yeah, you should say Avas Olam. Okay, let's just go through that slide carefully. Is there something missing here? There's something here. Yeah, I'm missing at the top of the page. Oh, here we are. That's what's he saying. Meanwhile, he's giving us the instruction to say Ava Rabba. As Avas Olam. Finally, this is the 4th edition of the Arizal Siddur. and that is published by Yaakov Koppel. And in Vishnitz, for example, this is the preferred edition of the Sidur Arizal. There's lots of differences, many differences between this Sidur and the other three Sidurim. Actually, all slightly different, but let's just look at our test page. So now, what does he say over here? Ein lo yimar aber rabba rach abas oilam. And so here we have whereas in nusach Ashkenaz we'd be saying aber rabba, but in nusach Arizal we're saying abas oilam. Here at this stage, it's not clear what they're saying about Shabbos. In the first two editions, it says Shabbos, you should say aber rabba. Here they're just saying the weekdays you should say abas oilam. Okay, so here we have the top of our slide here. Sorry. So here, the top of the slide here, this is, as I said before, the blank page, which is like the cover for the sidur which was discovered in Moscow, just those few years ago. And this is the handwriting Sabiat Kodesh of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Sidur Admur, Kaniret Fuschklov. So it's not with total confidence, but assumption that this is. I've lost my page. Just a second. Yeah, Kaniret Fuschklov, and now we'll appreciate this note over here. Now I can appreciate. Now, what's he saying over here? Until now, it was not clear. There was nusach Ashkenaz aber rabba. Then we have a difference between Shabbos and weekdays, and here we have a new clear directive. No, it's always Abbas Olam. So now, with all this background, you appreciate that one line. Okay, so this is, as I say, this was printed in Shklov Assumption, in Shklov Tufkuf Samach Gimel. The 3 years after the Alter Rebbe passed away, the Mittler Rebbe starts publishing, in a phenomenal way. He was most prolific in publishing of all the Rabbeim until perhaps a previous Frierdiker Rebbe's door, but really a prolific publishing. And he publishes a sidur of his father, of the Alter Rebbe. He published it in Kopust, Tovkuf Ein Vo, and this is the sidur with Chassidus, sidur im Dach. So the nusach is the same nusach. There are many changes, but basically it's the Alter Rebbe's nusach, the same nusach. And so here, let's take a look at our test page. So there it is from that sidur of Tovkuf Ein Vo. Gam b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov Oimrim Avos Olam Lo Ya'avor Rabba. So this is in Tzvish Chassidim. When we talked about the Alter Rebbe sidur, we were referring to we normally would be referring to the sidur im Dach, the sidur with the Chassidus. Let's move on. Perhaps the most significant pioneer in researching the Alter Rebbe sidur is the Rebbe's Elter Zeder, who's known as Rav Rom David Lavut. He was a Rav in Nikolaev, and a very mesudic type of a person. He published a sefer called Kavnoki, which any Bezdin which deals with Gittin today will have it in their. They'll use it for the processing of a get, was on the Darfin. But meanwhile, he researched the Alter Rebbe Siddur, trying to find sources, and he published a Siddur together with, he called it at first Shar HaTfilah or Shar Tfilah, and then later he publishes, in Tovkuf Memtes, I believe, he publishes the Siddur Torah. Now this front cover is not the original front cover, not front page, as you can see the Kahos style of the front page, but he called it Torah because for every posuk or every Mishnah, he has in the footnotes, he has a source where he got it from. So like in the Gemara, the psukim, the references to the psukim are called Torah. So he called the Siddur Torah. It's also, as you see, called Tfilas Yisrael. But no, if you ask what Tfilas Yisrael said, I don't think anyone will know what you're talking about. So let's see what our test page. So here again we have, and this is this copy of the kind of siddur which the Rebbe used for davening. When I was a kid, you never know. I had hardly ever seen a siddur Torah. It was published in Tofshin Zion, and then it was the next time it was published Tofshin Mem Zion. So really, yes, Torah Sidur was something which was a rarity, and but the Rebbe had the Torah Sidur, and this is the same page where you have the same emphasis. Gam b'Shabbos Yom Tov Abbas Olam and not Avraham. Let's move on. So there we have the Shara Koilel, which is the as I said, this is his second edition of Labut's research on the Siddur. Let's move on to the next slide. Here's a fascinating sikha. It's talking about I think it's the sikha. I think it's about Hachonos for Tkiyas. At any rate, the Rebbe says here an interesting understanding. There's a gavra and there's a chefse. We're not expected, all of us, to daven with the kavonos of the Arizal, but the siddur which we use is a siddur with the kavonos of the Arizal, and somehow through this we are connecting with those kavonos, even though we don't have those kavonos consciously, but by using the Alter Rebbe siddur, which is based upon kavonos Arizal, so we are somehow connecting with it. And you can read this slide more carefully at your leisure. Let me just see where it is, the source. I'm going to have to just enlarge it to see where it is. So it's in Chelik Lamates of Lekutei Sichos, page 67. Okay, is it 67? Whatever. It's in Chelik Lamates, and I think it's about the kavonos of Tkiyas Shofar, the Hachonos of Tkiyas Shofar. Let's move on. So then, I've showed you this before. This is published about 17 years ago. This is put together. Kindly Kahos took it under their wing to publish this research. And in the last 6 years, I've been working on a new edition, and that's been taking a long time. It's now, Baruch Hashem, getting closer. It's in the hands of the editors, and hopefully within the next year, we should see this going to print. The new edition, which will be, if this was a big volume, the next one, we had complaints, it was too large, so it's going to have to be 2 volumes. Not 2 Lekutei Torahs, but it's going to have to be a couple of volumes. Okay, now here, let's go through some very interesting developments. Now, you guys are after davening, I believe, yes? I'm before davening. On my street, I'm in Bnei Brak, by the way. What I mean is, I'm not in Bnei Brak, I'm in London, but I'm a real Hamish area, and we've had minyanim on the front, in our front gardens. Everyone's got these little haiskalach in London. We don't have like suburban, lots of lawns. Playing a haiskalach one after the other. I was in Williamsburg, I was in Borough Park, and Crown Heights Eichet, yeah, but small houses, and everyone's got a front garden, bayit vegan, and standing outside, and each one is in our front garden, and we're davening 3 times a day on the street. So ich halt far davening on Yom Tov. There's about 20 people, 25, 30 people. I'm one of the only ones who's not wearing a shtreimel. Anyway, so ich halt far davening. So all right, I want to ask you. You say you've said already, Adon Olam. B'yodoi afkid ruchi. Now let's go Pirush HaMilos. B'yodoi afkid ruchi. In His hand, in Hashem's hand, I entrust my spirit. Be'es ishon v'ya'ira. When I go to sleep and when I wake up, I entrust my spirit to Hashem. Explain to me, please. When I go to sleep, I understand. We say also the pasuk b'yodcha afkid ruchi. Padisa oisi. Yeah, I entrust my spirit because I'm releasing. I'm going to sleep. But what does it mean? When you wake up, you're reclaiming. What's it mean? Problem. So this question, I'm sorry about the blurry thing, but this question at the top of your slide is a quote from the Sidur Shalom. And he says, he struggles with this. And he says, Yesh medabkim va'ira l'teibas ishon. But then it should have been in Ishon bepasach, be'es Ishan. Yeah. the wording should be in Hashem's hands I entrust my spirit when I go to sleep. And I wake up and my spirit is together with my body. Hashem then Hashem is looking after me, I have nothing to fear. If that's the case, then the punctuation doesn't fit. If the pause should be between Ishan and V'ha'ira, so then why is it Ishan? It should be Ishan. In the print of Tov Kuf Samach Gimel, in the Shklov, it's talking with the comets. Be'ez Ishan. Takia, for the rhyming, it has to be Va'ira, has to be part of that stanza. But the correct reading is Be'ez Ishan. What happened in later prints, the second one is a print from, I think it's already the second print of Kafayim Vov, and they forgot about this, and they changed it back to a Pasach. Sometimes people correct things, yeah? If I cared, it was right with the comments, Be'ez Ishan. And that's what the Shaloi is sensitive to. He says, if you're going to put the pause between Ishan and Va'ira, it should be Ishan rather than Ishan. Okay, let's go on to another interesting thing. All right, we have in Brich Shmei Demori Olmo. Brich Shmei Demori Olmo, we say when we take out the Sefer Torah, it's generally attributed to be from the Zohar, although I've read a very good academic article recently which says it's actually a tefillah, which was then somehow put into copies of the Zohar. Doesn't matter. With the Poil, we all say Brich Shmei every time by Kriyas HaTorah. And so we have here, I know after the Kutcha Brichu, I am a servant of the Eibush, the Holy One, blessed be He. This Sagid no Kome, I bow before Him, Umikame Dikar Iraise, and I bow before His precious Torah, B'chol Idon V'idon at every moment. And we're all familiar with that niggin, which was the Rebbe turned on one Shavuos, I think, to Reb Zalman Teibel, and he asked him to sing a niggin, and he's by the table upstairs, by the Yom Tov meal, and he started thinking, I know, how the good Tziblich, so get no come, right? Say, yeah. So that fascinated because Zalman Teibel sang the niggin by the table, and the following day the Rebbe has this amazing sikha about the Indian of Ano Avdu the Kutchabrich. It's like a mamash a moedik sikha. Anyway, so we know that how normally in most sidurim the punctuation is the b'chol idon ve'idon belongs to the above sentence, that I prostrate myself before Hashem and before His holy Torah. B'chol idon ve'idon. In that, now the top of the page, that is the Shklov print. The lower part of the page is the Tov Kuf Ayin Vov, the second print from Kopust. And here the punctuation has changed. As you see here, the punctuation has the punctuation is changed. No, so our scholars have waxed eloquent whether this, which one is the mistake? Was it that the printer in Kopust got his act wrong? But what I can tell you is that when the Rebbe got into the picture and is the editor of the Sidurim, or whatever was published by Kahos, and you can see there was a book which was published by Rebel 11 about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, of Hagos L'Sidur Rabbeinu Azokin, of all the notes which the Rebbe had as he was preparing to print the Terer Sidur and this Rastov Sidur and the Tilas Hashem Sidur. Every one of Kahos's prints, it's the punctuation is that the B'chol Idon Ve'idon, it belongs to the next sentence. All right, so I'm going to take the view that this is Meduyik. B'chol Idon Ve'idon it belongs to the next sentence. What's the pshat? The pshat is, as someone has already, I think, already noted by Rabbi Shmuel Pesach, Rabbi Gemilski has also written about this years ago. Sven Lebedik. At any rate, so he, the word is like this. Read that sentence. I'm a servant of the Holy One, blessed be He. That I bow before Him. You're bowing down to the Torah the whole time. Yeah, when you take out the Sefer Torah, there is a whole regime in Likkutei Diburim of the Seder of the Rabbeim, the crown prince would be given psiche. By the Frierdiker Rebbe, Bechayev of the Rebbe Rashab, and so on, would go for psiche. And so the Rebbe Rashab at Psiche Sa'orin, he would bow slightly, imperceptibly. He would have this little bow towards the Sefer Torah. That's the Sagid no Kam Mikam Dekai Reise. To say B'chol Ido Beidon, you're bowing down to the Sefer Torah, it's actually not accurate. So here we have a change. Alter Rebbe, after the first print, says no. We should put the punctuation differently. Mikam Dekai Reise. Yeah. So the punctuation is that little change, so that to say that the bowing down is only is not the whole time, but it's only. I want to just look at someone to ask the question. Now, how do I see that question?
The question that came through was, what was the reason that in Adon Olam the Rebbe changed from B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra to B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra?
Okay, all right. Unprepared as I am, but as I said, it's a hobby, so this is. So everyone can hear the question. The question was, Yitzur Nivra or Yitzir Nivra? Okay. This goes a little bit of history. About a generation before the Alter Rebbe is born, you have a person, here you have his name on the screen, look at that. Reb Zalman Henna. The Zalman Henna is a master medactic. Now, he's a genius in Dikduk, and he published a sidur, and he published lots of works, critique on the sidur, and to make it more. He had the mazel that there was someone by the name of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, who Rabbi Yaakov Emden was. He did not shy away from telling Zog the Memes as he thought. As you know, his relationship with Rabbi Yonatan Eibeshitz and others. At any rate, Rabbi Yaakov Emden puts together a whole sefer of refutations to the Chidushim of Reb Zalman Henna, and that's called Luach Eres. It's been published in the last 10-15 years. I have a new edition, but yeah, and by me Kesofik that when the Alter Rebbe works on the Siddur, and we know the Rebbe said many times over the tradition that the Alter Rebbe, when he works on the Siddur, he has 60 different Sidurim, which he's researching, and then there's another Girsa, he had 36. Anyway, for sure the Alter Rebbe was researching, and by Mikra Sofaknish, that the Alter Rebbe used Reb Zalman Henna's works when he was researching and getting this Siddur put together, b'diuk. And Reb Zalman Henna is the one who comes up with the chiddush that it should be b'terem, that the word is yitzur, not the word yitzir. The word should be yitzur, and so that's one of the changes. It's not the Alter Rebbe's chiddush; it's Reb Zalman Henna. You can look it up in his sharet. Okay, I hope that's enough to answer that question. So here we have in benching. Okay, let's take a look now. Another beautiful thing which has been published within the last 20 years. The Arizal, I said before, did not publish a siddur, did not write a siddur, but he taught kavonas. Now the Arizal said, and many things he said, you should say this word like this, that word like that. What was the siddur which the Arizal himself used? When Reb Chaim Vital says, my Rebbe told me to change this word, what was the default? Which siddur did he have? So it's clear that it's already on record that he used the siddur which was published in Venezia, Reish Pei Dalet. So now we have access. Anyone who's got Otzar Chochmah can access this siddur which was published in Venice, Reish Pei Dalet, and this is the edition which was used by the Arizal and used by Reb Chaim Vital. So now I'm going to take here, as you see here, this is from Birchas Hamazon. Oh, sorry. Reish Pei Dalet was Reish Pei Dalet is about 20 years before the Arizal passed away. Yeah, Arizal passed away. Shin Lamed Gimel. Reish Pei Dalet is 50 years. So yeah. It was printed a little bit before the Arizal. Okay, so now we're looking at benching. Royeinu Roye Yisrael. Royeinu Roye Yisrael Hamelech Hatoiv HaMeitiv Shebechol Yoim V'Yoim. The Eibishter is our shepherd. Shebechol Yoim V'Yoim Hu Meitiv Lanu Hu He Heitiv Lanu Hu Yeitiv Lanu. Yeah, you recognize that passage. You can see a couple of changes. Let's take a look carefully. Shebechol Yoim. We have Bechol Yoim. Yeah, we'll see that in a moment. But meanwhile, Shebechol Yoim Hu Meitiv, present tense. Hu Heitiv, past tense. Hu Yeitiv is future tense. So that's the Sephardi nusach printed in Venice, Reish Pei Dalet. Then we have now the Ashkenaz nusach, as you see, printed by Reb Zalman Henna. Hamelech Hatoiv HaMeitiv Shebechol Yoim V'Yoim. In that same words. Hu Heitiv, Hu Meitiv, Hu Yeitiv Lanu. Now the Ashkenaz, as you know, they drop the word Lanu twice. Okay, but they've got Hu Heitiv, past, present, future. Now let's try to read that sentence, the Ashkenaz sentence in English. Let's go to the Sfard first. Shebechol yoim v'yoim hu meitiv lanu. Every day Hashem is being good to us. Not only is He good in the present, hu heitiv, that was in the past, and hu yeitiv, and we express our prayer that should be for the future. Hu yeitiv lanu. But let's go to the Ashkenaz. Shebechol yoim v'yoim hu heitiv, hu meitiv, hu yeitiv lanu. Can you read that sentence in straight English? Every single day He is good, was good, will be good. It doesn't flow. You can't say that every day. Who yativ lanu. You can't say doesn't read smoothly. You can shebechol yom v'yom deal with the present, but Ashkenaz have followed the past, present, future flow. So this is the Alter Rebbe is dealing with. So we as Chassidim from Europe, from Russia, from Ukraine, we were davening nusach Ashkenaz, and then comes the Mizritcher Magid, and he says Chassidim should daven nusach Sfard, and here we've got this whole hodgepodge, which we don't know what we're doing. As you have, I'm listening to the nusach. I'm digressing for a moment, but this is in one classic example. Ashkenaz finish off Shema Keleinu ki ata shemet tfilas amcho Yisrael barachme. Sfard ata shemet tfilas kol peh. Nusach Sfard Chassidi goes ki ata shemet tfilas kol peh amcho Yisrael barachamim. So you have this kind of hodgepodge of bringing together Ashkenaz and Sfard. And the Alter Rebbe, this is part of his Alter Rebbe's effort to machen psashtikal sidur, to make it readable. So now let's take a look what the Alter Rebbe did here, and he changed from al rishonim. Kimat, I can't look what he did. Hamelech hatoiv v'hameitiv lakoil bechol yoim v'yoim. Whereas everyone else has hameitiv lakoil shebechol yoim v'yoim, who made that shebechol yoim v'yoim is referring to the future, to the following sentence. The Alter Rebbe put in pintelach. He put in the dots, the punctuation. Bechol yoim v'yoim belongs to the previous thing. Hamelech hatoiv v'hameitiv lakoil bechol yoim v'yoim. End of sentence. With this, he broke up the sentence and to make it readable in nusach Ashkenaz. So the sequence, the timing, past, present, and future remains as nusach Ashkenaz. He's retained the nusach Ashkenaz, but by taking off instead of shebechol yoim, making bechol yoim and putting the punctuation there, he sorted out. It makes sense. So this is a fascinating. Without going through comparing it with a tooth comb, you would never pick this up. But that's what I was doing, as you say, a hobby, with a tooth comb to compare these tiny differences between Ashkenaz and Sfard and Alter Rebbe's nusach. Let's go on to another one. Oh, I did that already, didn't I? So what was this one? We did Adonai Olam. We did the benching one, and then we did about the B'chol Yidon. Here we have Honor B'choyach. Very relevant now, especially in Sfira Zeit. We're saying Honor B'choyach every day. Okay, I'm challenging you, and anyone who wants can respond. Can you see the difference between the first slide, the upper copy, This is from Shlov Tovkuf Samach Gimel. And the second one, which is from Tovkuf Ayin Vav, from the second edition which we have. Same on the B'choyach, same words. What differences do you see? No? The wording is exactly the same. What differences do you notice? No? Okay. Okay.
One response that came through pointed out the last line.
What's the difference? I don't see the difference. Okay. All right. So I'm going to point out to you. Do you notice the dots? The nekudas. On the Bechayach dot, Gedos Yemincha dot, Kalbarinas dot, Amcha Sagvenu, 2 dots, Doshi Yichudcha dot, Rachmitzit Koscha dot. Yeah, you see those dots? Yeah. And all those dots have been taken out in the second print. Or the subsequent print, yeah? Now, according to Kabbalah, this is a fascinating thing. According to Kabbalah, it should go the Kabbalah and say it should be in 2 word sequences. On the Bechayach, 2 words, you should pair them up. Now, in Pshat, doesn't read. Ono B'choyach. It doesn't read. Ono, please, B'choyach Gedulas Yimincha, with the power of your great right hand, Tatet Tzururo, you should untie the one who is bound. Kabel Rinas, Amcha Sagben. It doesn't read. Kabel Rinas Amcha. Accept the song of your people. Sagvenu, exalt us, Taharenu, purify us, Noira, O awesome one. So here we have an amazing situation where the Alter Rebbe has got here a sidur Kabbalah, and he wants to make it Shav L'chol Nefesh. So in the first print, he did it according to Kabbalah. He put those dots in, but it's not Shav L'chol Nefesh. You can't read it. You can't. The pshat, it doesn't go. Of course, the honor b'choyach is only in order to create the shemus, which are at the end of the line, which we don't pronounce. So the honor b'choyach is actually to formulate that Rosh Tevis. But yeah, when you read it, you have to understand what you're saying. So you can't have those dots there. So the Alter Rebbe in the second print says, no. I'm speculating, yeah? No, he says, take out those dots. That's the nishka shav. Where's the dots? It's not shav l'chol nefesh. So it's taken out. Oh, you can't Kabbalah. For if you're into Kabbalah, you'll manage both, yeah? You can think both things at the same time. Oh, all right. Here and we have here a little note, which is printed in the on the page by Musaf. Is it by Musaf or by Shachris? About the switch over. And so here we have a halacha, and so I'm going to first read from the Chaya Odom, which is published in the Alter Rebbe's Times, I think. And he says, this is Shmini Atzeres, yeah, that the announcement should not be just Masha Baruach. That's not good enough. It has to be, because there are places where they say in summer also Masha Baruach. Have you ever heard of this? Anyone? Have you ever heard of people saying in summer Masha Baruach Amerit at all? Now there's a small minority of kehillas which do that, but now at the top of the page we have the Alter Rebbe's nusach, where he says the whole discussion, but he says there's a din of ein maskirin gvuras gshomim until it's announced. There has to be an announcement halacha. The Alter Rebbe says Mashav Ruach doesn't count as an announcement because it's not talking about Geshem. There has to be a Hachroza Gvuras Gshomim. Therefore, he says instruction for the Gaber. If you're a Gaber somewhere out there, you have an instruction for the Alter Rebbe. When you make your announcement, Mashav Ruach is not adequate. You have to say also Merid Geshem. So this is a little instruction. Okay. Here, this, as I mentioned before, a Ksav Yad Sidur of the Mizritcha Magid, and this is a copy of that manuscript. V'chein tzadikim yiru v'yismachu, yishorim yaloizu, avlos tik patspia v'harisha kula v'oshen tichle. So we have here kavanos on that of Chein Tzadikim. All right, well, I'm running a little bit late. Here we have also another sidur which was discovered in the collection in Moscow, and that's a sidur from Tov Reish Chov Ches. Much later, it's a sidur which, as you can see, has a stamp. It belonged to the Rebbe Maharash, and you can see this online. It's available. Anyone can access it, and there are hundreds of little corrections. It's not. I must say, it's not a very accurate sidur, and but that was what you had available. And there are hundreds. The corrections are not in the Rebbe Maharash's handwriting, but they are. It's very already here. Avram David Lavut is involved in this edition, but he only publishes his Shari Tefillah many years later. My last slide, I'm going to finish off with. So here we have. This is not the Alter Rebbe sidur. This is from the Kahos sidur, and you can see on the right side of the page is the Aleph base as it is in the Torah Ur sidur, and then you have on the left side of the page the Aleph base as it is in the Tilas Hashem sidur. Now I heard from a Melamed, I think his name is Smith, a Melamed who lives in New York. He went into Yechidus and he asked the Rebbe. He's a Melamed and he teaches children Aleph base, and he wants to be able to test the children if they they can read the Aleph base, but they can say just by rote, by parrot fashion. So he wants to hear them if they can read the letters vertically. So now go down the page instead of just across the line. So he wanted to kind of prepare a luach for his class, whatever, with the Aleph base, but he wanted to make some adjustments. So he says to the Rebbe in his Yechidus, he says he wants to print this chart with Machen Shinuyim. So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe was concerned about him making Shinuyim to the sidur. So the Melamed said, Ich mein nicht. I know that the sidur of the Nekudas, the sidur of the Nekudas is al pi Kabbalah. That's what the Melamed says to the Rebbe. And I'm not thinking about that. He just then explained what he wants to do. And so the Rebbe gave him, he wanted to move out the she and Tov, that they should be like in line with the other boxes. Okay, so that's his Yechidus. A few weeks later, he wakes up in the middle of the night and he can't sleep. And he goes over to his library and he takes out a sefer from Reb Pinchas Koritzer. And here you see the quote from Reb Pinchas Koritzer, which he discovers that night. But the Rebbe told him not to tamper with the layout as it is in the Tilas Hashem sidur. Now listen to what he says here. That the 22 letters of the Torah are divided into Din, Rachmim, Zoch, and Akeva. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dal, Hevav is Heim, Rachmim, Gmurim. Zayin, Ches, Tes, Yud, Chof, Endechov, Heim, Rachmim, Stam. Lamed, Mem, Samach, Nun, Samach, Ayin is Din, Stam. And Pei, Tzadik, Kuf, Reish, Shin, Tov is Din, Gomer. So it's fascinating that you compare the layout of the Aleph base in the Torah Er sidur and the layout of the Aleph base in the Tilas Hashem sidur. And you see how the layout in the Tilas Hashem sidur, which the Rebbe edited, is mechuvan, is perfectly matching the distribution of Chesed, of Din and Rachmim and Zoch and Akeva as it is by the Koshnitz Magid. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, no. Pinchas Koritz. I'm mixing up Koshnitz and Koritz. So it's just an appreciation of the diuk when the Rebbe says don't tamper with the way it is in the sidur, and so it's you've got Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.